A lot of times people get a little confused on problems like this because there's multiple variables, x's and y's, but don't let that confuse you. If you can, just imagine like the y's aren't there at first. And so we're going to go about it the same exact way. So factors of x squared are just x and x. And then what are the factors of negative 6 that add up to negative 5? Well, I would do negative 6 and positive 1. But what you have to remember is it's not negative 6, it's negative 6y squared. So factors aren't going to be negative 6 and 1, but rather they're going to be negative 6y and 1y. And again, just to check, if I multiplied these, I'd get 1xy. If I multiplied these, I'd get negative 6xy, which adds up to negative 5xy. So don't let the whole fact that there's y's in there also confuse you. They just kind of go along for the ride, if you will. Okay, one of the last ones with the trinomials we're going to talk about. Now this time it says x to the fourth. And again, don't let the fact that it's x to the fourth confuse you. So let's go through and try and factor anyways. So we have to think of a combination of 2 and negative 36, those factors, to add up to negative 1. Well, what I would do is now instead of having x and x, because x times x is x squared, we're now going to have x squared. So I'm going to do 2x squared and x squared. And then I would probably do, excuse me, plus 4 and minus 9. And just do a quick check. This is negative 9x squared. This is 8x squared, which add up to negative x squared. So I did it right. And there you go. Well, that's the basics of trinomial factoring. Hopefully, most of that's a review. But another thing that we want to talk about is difference of two squares. Now, the difference of two squares follows this rule. Difference of two squares. And what that means is the difference of two perfect squares, actually. And that means this, or it says this. If I have x squared minus y squared, so difference meaning minus, perfect square, then it factors like this, x plus y, x minus y. So essentially, it factors to be the square roots of these, plus and minus. So as I look at x squared minus 9, that means that it would factor to be x plus 3, x minus 3. And how do I know? Well, again, I can check. I can just FOIL it back together. So if I FOILed it back together, I would get x squared minus 3x plus 3x minus 9. X squared, these cancel, and I just get x squared minus 9. So there you go. Okay, let's see, what about the next one? Well, you just take the square root, so square root of 16x squared is 4x, plus the square root of this is 5, and then same thing, but minus. And that's all there really is to it in terms of difference of two squares. Hopefully that's not terribly difficult for you. Let's try this next one. This one's a bit of a challenge. So, first question is it a difference of two squares? Well, it's minus, so that's good. X to the 8th is a perfect square, and so is 81y to the 4th. So the square root of x to the 8th is x to the 4th, plus the square root of 81y to the 4th is 9y squared, and then it's x to the 4th minus 9y squared. Now, hopefully what you noticed is that this factor that we got right there is a difference of two squares again. This one is not because it says plus, but this one says minus. This is a perfect square, and so is this. So I can actually factor even more. So I'm going to bring down the first one. And then this one will factor more. Square root of x to the 4th is x squared. Plus square root of this is 3y. And then x squared minus 3y. And now I am done. Okay, nothing else can be factored. Okay, and you have to pay attention to that. You got to pay attention to two things. One is that this is a difference of two squares, so sometimes you'll have to factor your factors. Okay, but also notice that this one is not a difference of two squares, only because it doesn't say minus. It says plus right there. So you got to be aware of that. Don't just start going crazy factoring everything because you have some perfect squares. You got to make sure you pay attention that it actually follows the pattern. And there you go. That's factoring polynomials and difference of two squares.